Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are dissecting a truly fascinating case study of systemic corruption, unchecked greed, and some incredibly clever legal loopholes. We're going to see how exploiting a corrupt system's own rules can sometimes be the absolute only way to break it.
So, how exactly did a herd of cows become paid farm laborers? Yeah, I know, it sounds like a ridiculous punchline, right? But believe it or not, this exact question sits right at the center of today's explainer. It brilliantly showcases what happens when a corrupt judge's own absurd rules are used directly against him. But to understand how we get to this bizarre bovine labor force, we need to meet our cast of characters first.
Section 1. Life in Shriram village.
Picture this village. On one side, we've got Dharma. He's this incredibly self-reliant, hard-working farmer with a modest 2 acres of land. He diligently grows just enough greens to sustain his family, and he really prides himself on his independence. But living right alongside him is Badaya. Badaya is a wealthy landlord hoarding 25 acres of fertile land. And the thing is, he isn't just a farmer. He is a greedy moneylender who actively profits off the desperation of everyone else. Now, balancing out this whole dynamic is Dharma's fiercely loyal friend, Ramaya. Early on in our story, Ramaya actually notices Dharma finishing up his harvest and offers to lend a hand. Dharma, being as fiercely independent as he is, politely declines because he doesn't want to be a burden. But Ramaya reminds him that, hey, a little help from a friend never hurts. This really establishes the tight-knit, supportive bonds among the honest villagers, which is a stark contrast to the isolation of greed we're about to explore.
Section 2. The Greed of the Daya.
So Badaya had an absolutely ruthless business model. He actively targeted struggling farmers who desperately needed basic supplies, like fertilizer, just to save their crops. When they came to him pleading for help, he trapped them with these highly predatory loan conditions. We're talking a steep 10% interest rate, plus a mandatory clause forcing them to sell their entire harvest directly back to him. It was a literal textbook debt trap, practically ensuring these farmers could never, ever recover.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth did he get away with this blatant exploitation? Well, meet Pushaya, the village headman and local authority figure. Pushaya was squarely in Badaya's pocket. And because the local justice system was completely compromised by this cozy financial alliance, absolutely no one dared to question Badaya's authority.
Section 3. The cruel sabotage. See, Badaya deeply despised Dharma's independence and the genuine respect the village had for him. He couldn't stand that Dharma never needed his help, so he devises this devastating plot. Day 1, Badaya complains to his crony, Pushaya, about Dharma. That very night, Pushaya whispers a wicked plan back to him. Then, on day 2, Badaya deliberately releases his own cattle into Dharma's field, letting the animals just trample and ruin an entire year's worth of hard work. And if that wasn't bad enough, on day 3, instead of apologizing, Badaya and Pushaya maliciously summon Dharma to court. They preemptively accuse him of mercilessly beating the animals when he was simply chasing them away from his ruined crops. It's just a calculated, incredibly cruel double blow.
Falling to his knees in his ruined fields, Dharma realizes reporting this crime is just utterly useless. He says, Pushaya and Badaya are 2 sides of the same coin. There's no justice for me there. And honestly, this highlights the paralyzing power of systemic corruption. It traps innocent people by completely robbing them of any hope for a fair hearing.
Section 4. An absurd court ruling. So we are in court, and the systemic corruption here reaches a frankly comical level. Dharma pleads his innocence. He states his crops were destroyed and he only chased the cattle away. But Pushaya, our corrupt headman, scowls and delivers this absolutely unbelievable judgment. He actually rules that the trespassing cattle were doing Dharma a favor. Pushaya argues they were just eating weeds, effectively clearing the land. He literally twists blatant property destruction into an obligatory service fee. The sheer audacity of it is just stunning.
And the financial blow? Absolutely devastating. Pushaya actually orders Dharma to pay a 100 rupee compensation fee for supposedly distressing the cattle, plus an absurd 50 rupee labor cost for the cattle's so-called weed clearing services. That's a 150 rupee extortion explicitly designed to completely bankrupt an innocent man.
Defeated, Dharma actually borrows 200 rupees from his loyal friend Ramaya just to pay off this extortion. But Ramaya, he is not going to let this injustice stand. Which brings us to Section 5, Ramaya's clever retaliation. So this leaves us with a pretty massive problem to solve, and it's the core question of this entire explainer.
When the judge and the criminal are actively working together, how do you defeat a corrupt court? If the rules are entirely made up to benefit those in power, how can an honest person possibly win?
While Ramaya figures it out, he executes this brilliant two-step trap. The very next morning, Ramaya leads his own cattle directly into the corrupt headman Pushaya's fields, letting them graze freely and deliberately destroy his crops. Pushaya's guards catch this, and Pushaya is absolutely furious. But Ramaya doesn't fight back. Instead, he simply nods, baiting the enraged headman into escalating the matter outside the village, all the way up to a real legal authority, the city magistrate. Ramaya masterfully uses Pushaya's own arrogant anger against him to get the case completely out of that rigged local court.
Section 6. Justice finally served. Let's see exactly how this clever trap perfectly springs shut. Guys, this is where the symmetry is just beautiful. Ramaya stands right before the city magistrate and gleefully admits that, yes, his cattle destroyed Pushaya's crops. But then he brings up the precedent. He argues to the magistrate that he is simply following the exact legal precedent established by Pushaya himself in the village court. If cattle eating crops is legally considered paid labor in Pushaya's jurisdiction, well then, Ramaya shouldn't be punished. He should be paid for his cattle's hard work in Pushaya's field. The city magistrate hears this completely absurd defense and immediately recognizes the deep corruption that's been running rampant in the village. Exposed entirely by his own ridiculous logic, Pushaya is swiftly fired and removed from his position by the magistrate. Recognizing his cleverness and deep sense of justice, the magistrate then appoints Ramaya as the new village headman. On top of that, the greedy Bajaya is forced to pay Dharma his 200 rupees back, plus significant additional financial damages for the destroyed harvest. The villains are thoroughly defeated by the exact same system they tried to rig. As peace finally returns to the village and Dharma is free to farm without fear, this incredibly satisfying resolution leaves us with something really important to think about. It shows us that sometimes you don't actually need to break the rules to beat a corrupt system. You just need to apply those rules symmetrically. So, if a system's own rules can be its undoing, what other corrupt structures out there are just waiting for a clever twist of logic? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this sparked some curiosity, and I'll catch you next time.